In this module, we'll cover runtime feedback and debugging. The most obvious type of runtime feedback is an execution message. We've seen how to create these in analysis rules. You can also create them using the message step. A test report can give you a lot of info as well. For example, by double-clicking on the error message given in this test report, we are taken to the step that generated the error. We can see that the query in the analysis rule is invalid, and now we know what to fix in the test case. You can also use a test report to see each iteration of a loop and which fork was taken in the case of a conditional. Breakpoints are another handy debugging feature. Put a breakpoint on a step in your test case, and execution will pause before that step executes. When the execution is paused, the debugging perspective is opened. An arrow will point to the next step to be executed. From here, the test can be canceled or resumed, or steps can be executed one at a time. If the pause step is a procedure, there is an option to enter into the procedure or execute the procedure as a single step. The data view shows the values of each variable, the values of each parameter available to the test case, and all the topology properties associated with the current topology. Let's set a breakpoint in our test and take a look at the debugging perspective. I'm going to select the first step in our loop and click this button here to toggle a breakpoint. We can see that there's now a breakpoint on this step, so when I run the test, it's going to pause just before executing this step. So once the execution hits the breakpoint, it's going to kick us into the debugging perspective. So here I can see the next step to be executed, and I can also see all the variables that we have created so far. So if I take a look at this data view, if I expand the stack and the frame, this frame is for our main procedure, which is the only procedure we're looking at right now. Now I can see all the different variables that we have. So the first one in the list is the primary interface name, and that's a variable that we created here in step 2.1. And that's going to be the value of that topology property that we got via the tbmail command. We can also see a few other variables. Value is the variable created from the last query in the last analysis rule we did. So if we go back, that's going to be generated from this step here. So this query gave us this value. We can also see we have a variable called I here, and that's created by our for loop. So let's see what happens as we step through this one at a time. I'm going to click the execute one step button. We can see that that edit interface command was given. Now we're going to disable the step, and now we're going to check that the step or that the interface is down. So if I hit execute one step now, we're going to see the next execution message being generated. So let's go through this a couple more times. So now we're about to enter our loop for the second time. You can see that the value for I has incremented. Now this breakpoint is still here in the first step of our loop. So if I just click resume execution, it's going to run until it hits that breakpoint again. So we can see that I is incremented again. We can see we have another set of our execution messages. So the loop ran one more time. You can add more breakpoints and remove breakpoints from this view here. So if I wanted to have the test run all the way through, not stop again, I can just remove the breakpoint and hit resume. When the test finishes, it's going to be in the debugging view still. So if you want to change it to the perspective you're used to, just come over here to the top right corner and click iTest execution, and it's going to shift everything back to the way you're used to seeing these test reports. In the next module, we're going to look at how we can make this test case work for a totally different device family. So we've been using a Juniper DUT thus far. What if we wanted to run this test on a Cisco device? The Cisco device is going to have completely different commands and responses, so we're going to have to abstract all that information from the test case.